Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Showing Up to Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and I'm very excited to be here. Well, I am excited. I'm enthusiastic, but to be honest with you, my energy is a little different than it normally is, and that is because I am recording this. It's not terribly early in the morning right now. It's about almost 10 o'clock, but I'm doing it before I do my daily meetings of the day. Because of the way my schedule is worked out today, I really don't have a whole lot of time later on, so I have to do this ahead of time. And the reason I'm telling you this is because this is just one of, yet another of so many opportunities that we have to practice mindfulness, right? Remembering that mindfulness is about paying attention to what's happening in the present moment, right? And so, as I do this, normally I do these podcasts and YouTube videos in the middle of the day, right? In between, meetings. And usually there's like a 1 or 2 hour period in the middle of the day where I can do this work, And so the energy is much different in the middle of the day versus how it is in the morning, right? I mean, that's natural, right? It has to be different, right? And so here's the thing, right? As I go through this process, a very familiar process, but made kind of unfamiliar because of the different day of the week or a different time of the day that I'm doing it, it's going to feel differently, right? And so in my mindfulness practice, number one, I accept the fact that my energy is not going to be the way it usually is. And in fact, I just had to restart this video after 2 minutes because I made a mistake. And so I have to accept that. If I get angry or upset about that, well, then generally speaking, that's going to prevent me from doing what I need to do. I'm not going to record the video. I'm going to do it maybe at 6 o'clock tonight. And then my energy is not going to be it's going to be a different energy there too. It's going to be tired at the end of the day kind of thing, as opposed to like sort of tired in the beginning of the day, just for lack of being energized, So anyway, you can look for these opportunities too, right? Like let's say, you normally do laundry on Saturdays, right? But next week you're going to be away, so you're doing laundry on Tuesday, right? Or Thursday or whatever, right? Pay attention to what it feels like to do the laundry on that different day. Just notice it. Just notice the energy. Notice the different, conflicts that you might have, right? Like all of a sudden on a Tuesday, you also have to deal with like grocery shopping, where Saturday was just all laundry, that kind of thing. And if we can pay attention to it and sort of, again, in an accepting way and with kindness and curiosity, well, then it's an adventure, right? And this is what I wanted to talk about today, and I'm going to do this segment first, even though I had planned to do it the opposite way around. But I think this is a good segue. So the other night, I was very deep in some thought. Like, there's lots of different ways to meditate, right? There's the sort of traditional way that we meditate in the way that we try to train or we work to train our mind and our physical brain to be able to pay attention, right? And this builds integration, as I've said, and from that integration comes kindness and compassion, right? That's how meditation, generally speaking, that's how it works, right? And so traditionally, what we're doing with meditation is we're focusing our mind on something, right? Some people use a chant for that. Some people might use a candle. Some people might use a sound of a gong. Some people use a smell. When I teach people, we use the breath, right? We use the awareness of the sensation of the breath, right? And we focus our attention on that sensation of the breath. And anytime our mind wanders, and it will wander, right? Even if you've been doing meditation for years, sometimes your mind wanders, right? And if you're just starting a meditation, your mind wanders all the time during meditation. It's just the way it goes. Your mind creates waves like your mind creates thoughts like the ocean creates waves. You see, this is not being fully energized this morning. And so that's the traditional way to meditate. But there's also another way to meditate, which we might call sort of an open awareness meditation, right? And that is where we just allow it all to come in, right? We just, instead of training ourselves to notice a thought and then come back from the thought, in this kind of meditation, what we do is we still maintain a conduition sort of profile and perspective, right? We're not latching on to thoughts. We're not creating things with our mind. But what we're doing is we're allowing the thoughts to just tumble through our mind, and the emotions and the sensations and even the sounds and everything else that we can hear. And in this place, and I encourage you to try it. I mean, especially if you're comfortable and you've been doing sort of the traditional way of meditating for a while, try this. It's really quite fascinating what happens. And a lot of times what will happen is you'll come up with ideas that you never kind of thought about before, right? It just will, when you allow the mind to do what it's doing, it will do it, and it will give you something that's like, whoa, look at that nugget. And so one of the nuggets that came to me on, Sunday night, I was doing this meditation, and one of the thoughts that came to me was that, and it just came exactly like this. It said, the thought was that I am the entertainment, my consciousness is the show. And I scrawled that down in my notebook like as fast as I could, and then went back into meditation. And so let me tell you what I mean by that, and where this sort of understanding comes from. So when we, our whole lives, right now, I mean, we're taught to be aversive throughout our whole lives, right? It's just the way it goes, right? You skin your knee. The first thing you got to do is mom kisses it so it feels better, right? And then we grow into, when, that sort of idea of kiss it, make it better as soon as possible because I cannot handle this pain, that turns into, oh, I have a little headache. I need to take an Advil, right? And even like, a lot of times what I've been doing lately is I've been training myself to be okay with being hungry at night. I know that it's better for my body not to eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at midnight. And so even though my stomach is telling me that it wants that peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I know that the greater good and the greater sort of thing for me is not to have it. And so I'm practicing being okay with being hungry, right? Like it's not the end of the world to be a little hungry. I have food. I'm not going to starve. I have some extra reserves here too. And so this whole kind of concept of sort of allowing ourselves to be with it is something, again, we're trained, it's trained out of us, and this is what advertising is based on, right? If there's something you need, there's somebody who can buy it, right? There's an app for that, right? And that's what this whole, let me plug my new course. This is exactly the kind of stuff that we're going to be covering in my new course, okay, that starts next Saturday. But anyway, I'll tell you more about that later. But the idea of, we're constantly, like, if we're bored, right? Like Gabor Mate says, and this is part of his ADHD, that he used to, like, even if he was standing online at the bank for 5 minutes, he needed to have a paperback book in his pocket so that he could read, instead of just standing there and just being there alone with his thoughts, right? Jack Kornfield shares a comic strip in one of his books that has a guy in a car, and he's, on a desert landscape, and a billboard that he's passing says, "Nothing but your own intrusive thoughts for the next 250 miles," And so there's such a fear of being unentertained. There's this thing that we have that, we get in the car, we turn on the radio, we come home, we turn on the TV, we constantly need this sort of, entertainment, something to sort of occupy our mind, right? And so, of course, mindfulness is all about practicing not doing that, right? It's about practicing being with your mind, right? And so, but a lot of times what happens is, because of the way that we're trained in this sense, right? Because we're trained from a very early age to, if you don't feel well, you got to do something to make yourself feel better as soon as possible, right? That training, what that does, I believe, is that translates into when things go wrong in our lives, right? In the same way, like as soon as I have a headache, I need to get an Advil. Oh my gosh, we don't have Advil. It's an emergency now. I got to get Advil, right? Even though if you just sit with the pain for a few minutes, have a glass of water, it's probably not going to hurt for that long, But there's nothing wrong with hurting too, right? Like that's the thing. We and that's that aversion, right? That we think that, pain is bad, right? Or like a, turmoil in a relationship or a marriage, that's bad. Or, being, having not enough money in the bank, that's bad, right? Having a car that's, old, that's bad, right? We have this aversive sense to so many things in our lives. And again, because of the way our society has trained us, is that when we perceive something as bad, we need to fix it right away. We can't just let it be bad, right? And so when I, and oftentimes when I talk to people, or even, just friends and family members, and I see people who are just, they feel like, if life isn't going the way that they had planned their life to go, they're just overwhelmed with this, the stress and the shame and the guilt and the worry and the anger that comes from that place of this isn't what I signed up for. And that's the thing, right? So if I, like, look, there was a time in my life, right? I've told you all bits and pieces of my past, right? But when I was in corporate America, right, like I was making, at one point it was like $175,000 a year. I had expense accounts. I, flew first class or business class everywhere. I ate at 5-star restaurants all the time. I had, all the trappings of life, right? And now I have none of that, right? I'm, literally there's, we're among the 77% of Americans who live paycheck to paycheck for sure, right? Like that's how it is, because you don't get rich doing this kind of work. You get rich selling people tobacco products that are killing them. You don't get rich saving people, which is okay, whatever. But anyway, that's the point. Right? Like I can sit here and I could be angry at the world because I don't have the money that I used to have. And I could feel that tension. I could feel that shame. I could feel that overwhelming sense of inadequacy. That's all untrue. Right? But the point is that let's not even talk about whether it's true or not, right? Because we don't even have to get to that point, right? Because the point is that with my statement that I am the entertainment and my consciousness is the show, right? What that means is that in my life right now, I am a guy who doesn't have money. And this is interesting, right? This is fascinating. It's like watching the movie of my life. Right? And in this scene of the movie, we're in a place of conflict. That's another point, right? That if you went to see a movie, right, and there was no conflict in the movie whatsoever, even a Disney movie, if there was no conflict whatsoever, you would feel completely unfulfilled. You would feel like, I wish I could get my money back for that thing. Right? And you can even see this sometimes in poorly made movies. You can see that they're not using conflict and resolution. Plot is I was made to memorize this in high school. Let's see if my hippocampus can still do this. Plot then is a series of interrelated events in which a conflict or conflicts in which a group of characters experiences a conflict or conflicts that is then resolved. Something like that. I didn't get it exactly, but that's what a plot is of a story, right? And any story you're reading, a myth, a novel, a movie, a TV show, an animated TV show, a Disney movie, all of it. It all revolves around the conflict that the characters experience and how they go about resolving those conflicts. That's what we pay for. That's why we buy the books. That's why we pay the money and go see the movies. That's why we get Netflix. We don't know that's why, but that's why. Because that's what feels interesting to us. But yet, when one thing goes wrong in our life, oh no, it's all going to crap. We got to fix it all. No, we don't. We don't. We can just be aware of it. We can just see it as, again, a conflict in a plot. It's a plot twist. It's exciting, right? When we're watching a movie or reading a book and there's a plot twist and something happens to the character, it's like, oh boy, what's going to happen next? I can't wait to see how this all works out. But yet in our lives, it's like, as soon as something goes bad, it's like we want to stop everything until we fix this one thing. But that's not how it works in a movie or in a book that we go to entertain ourselves with. So instead of looking outside for entertainment, I try to look at my life for entertainment. And to be sure, there are days where it's like, oof, man, this is not a page turner of a book here, like this is crap, like this is really difficult. And that's okay, right? It's okay that things are difficult, right? And that, again, that's part of the story of your life, right? So if you can look at some of these difficulties in your life as plot twists, as opportunities for understanding you, understanding this world, understanding the interactions and interrelations of all of the things in your life. We can bring that curious, non-judging awareness to all of our conflicts and all of our difficulties. And if we do that, they don't seem that difficult. All right, everybody. I'll be back in the next segment with a slightly personal story that I'm not sure if I told you this enough, but I'm going to tell it again. So see you in a second. All righty, everybody. Welcome back to segment number 2 on this Friday, November 12th. I'm really happy to be here with you still and again. I hope you enjoyed that last segment. I'm feeling like my motor's getting warmed up here, and so I wanted to talk about something else that happened. I swear I told you in the last segment I actually stopped after like 2-3 minutes and I started over because I was telling this story and I was like, wait a minute, this seems too familiar, and I don't know if I've told you this story. Now, this is like, there are moments in my life where I feel like I'm speaking of the movies from the last episode, from the last segment. There are moments in my life where I feel like I am the guy from Memento. If you've never seen that movie, it's a fascinating movie. It's about a guy who has a damage. I believe it's to his hippocampus. I have to watch it now that I know the neuroscience. I haven't watched it in many years before I studied neuroscience and neuroanatomy. But he could not form short-term memory, right? He could not form new memories, and so sometimes I feel that way because I'm doing these podcasts and YouTube channel. I'm doing I do TikTok videos, and then I also talk about this kind of stuff with my clients. So a lot of times I'm telling a story, I'm like, wait a second, have I been here before? And it's such a confusing thing. But again, it's interesting. It's not bad. It's not good. It's interesting. And so I hope that you find it interesting that I may be telling you this story again. I mean, it's an important story, I think. And so I want you to hear it. And not the details of there actually are no details to the actual story, but the moral of the story is really, really important. So the other morning, I was Wednesday morning, and this was a day where I did not record, and I already gave you my mea culpa about that. I had a tremendous trauma trigger, and a big one, like a big one. I was sobbing. And now again, I think I did mention it when I was telling you this the other day. So the trigger for this, and I'm talking sobbing, like wailing, like crying like a baby. Literally. It might be hard for you to picture that. This is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month in November here. And so I'm going to be talking a lot about my own issues of mental health, because I think part of the problem, or one of the challenges of human beings, or sorry, not human beings, but men in our society, is that we don't talk about our mental health very much. We tend to, the role of the man in our society is, man up, rub some dirt on it, suck it up, all that kind of stuff, and we're meant to be the strong ones in the nuclear family, right? Like that's just the way it is, but society itself, which again is something we're going to be covering in the new course that's coming out in about a week from now. Society itself, drives men into a very sort of austere and ascetic kind of place, right? That we're not, we're not encouraged. There's not an outlet for us to talk about our mental health. Right. And that's part of the problem. I really think it is. And that's something actually, I've been very open with my own trauma here. And one of the things that happened a couple of weeks ago, and this is really fascinating. I have not shared this with you, but one of the things that happened a couple of weeks ago is that I I've been struggling and struggling on how to have a conversation with my wife about my trauma and to let her in on some of this stuff that I'm learning about myself. And what I realized was that it's so hard to talk about because I never was able to talk about it before. Like I never had the outlet. So therefore, it's just really, not that it's hard in the sense of like, oh man, it feels uncomfortable to talk about myself. That's not what I mean. I mean, just like, I don't know how to do it. It's like asking me to go juggle. Like I've never juggled before. I'll try, but I don't know how to do it. Right. So I'm not going to get up there in front of 50 people and try to juggle. Right. I mean, I'll go in my bedroom and try it a couple of times first, And so talking to, and the ironic thing is that, and this was my point, right, is that for the 20 some odd years that I've been with my wife, we first started dating in 1999. And so for 22 years now, right, over the course of those 22 years, we have literally had hundreds of conversations about her mental health, issues that she's experienced from her childhood and her trauma and all of the things that, that she's endured, right? And all this time, I literally thought that I was the one that had it easier. Like I thought she had the harder childhood. And that's the thing about, childhood abuse, especially, abuse isn't always easy to name, right? And sometimes abuse just feels like normal. And that's the thing, right? But as a man, I think my role was that of the supporter, right? And so anyway, the other night I finally just, we just tumbled into the conversation somehow, and I started talking about it. And like once I started talking about it, like I couldn't stop talking about it, which felt great. But literally, I don't think I got 5 minutes into the 40-minute conversation that I had about it, and my wife was sobbing. Like she was crying like she had just lost her own child. Like she was just weeping for the way that, the young child. And of course, because we have a son that's like exactly like what I was, So when I'm telling her about the things that I lived with, which I shared a few things here, but it's come into much clearer detail the more that I've worked on it these last few months. But but when I tell her things that I'm going through, it's like she's seeing her son go through it, and that's hard, and so yeah, we got to start talking about ourselves, men. We really do, and I'm always very, very careful I'm always very careful to be very honest and upfront about this. I am not a trained or licensed psychologist, therapist, counselor, social worker, psychiatrist. I'm none of that. Okay. But I am someone who can listen. And so if you are struggling, whether you're a man or a woman, you don't have to be a man for this, but we're highlighting that this month because November is, Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And so if you're a man or a woman and you feel like you don't have anybody to talk to, I know what that feels like. And I'm going to tell you right now that when I opened up and told my story the other night, it was like a 5-ton weight was pulled off my shoulders or off my chest. I felt like I could finally breathe. It's hard to describe how good it felt, how relieved, how beautifully just it felt to get it off my chest. And so if you're someone who doesn't know how to talk about it, and if you're someone who's just confused and reluctant and just, wrapped up in it, and you don't even know how to start the conversation, well, start the conversation with me. I'll ask you a question that will start it, okay? I'll help you with that. And then all you got to do is talk. And we can do it like this on a video. We can do it on a phone. If you're in Denver, we can meet up for a cup of tea, okay? So anyway, in the 6 minutes that I have left, let me talk about what I was set out to talk about in this episode. And it's fine because it really doesn't take that much more than a few minutes. There's a really important aspect of how we relate to each other, right? In terms of our own interpersonal conflict, if you will. And so what I mean by that, the other morning, my wife and so my wife and my daughter have this arrangement that my daughter and I know I told you some of this. My daughter wakes my wife up at like 6:30 in the morning so that they can go like to the store and kind of hang out a little bit in the morning before my wife goes to work. Right? It's beautiful. And so the other morning, and seriously, this is an interaction that probably 99.9% of people would not even have noticed what happened, right? And there are hundreds of other interactions that my wife has had with my daughter, with me next to them, that I wouldn't have even noticed, right? But there was something about this one. There was something about the way that my wife was not responsive to my daughter, right? That just triggered me. It just triggered me. And again, it didn't trigger me as a almost 53-year-old man with lots of support, resources and stuff like that. It triggered the 5-year-old child in me, right? Who had that issue with my parents, right? And so here's the thing, and I know I told you all this the other day, so I'm not going to go through all the details again, but here's the important thing about this, okay? Actually, it's not even that story. I can't believe I'm telling you the wrong darn story. Wow, that's funny. That is funny. All right, well, I'm not going to start over at this point. So you know what? Okay, I'm going to share the story that I was going to share today. I'm going to share that one tomorrow, okay? I can't believe this happened. That's so funny. Again, this is the entertainment, right? I just made the biggest mess up on a podcast that anybody could make. And yet, I'm laughing, right? And that's what we got to do with life. So let me spend the next couple of minutes telling you more about this course that I'm going to be going through in a week. And I promise you I'm going to tell you this other story tomorrow. And it is very important. But let's talk about this course, okay? Because we only do have a couple minutes left here. So, and it really wouldn't have given the other story enough credit, enough time and honor. So we're going to do that tomorrow for a full 15-minute segment. I really am sorry about that. But this course, okay, so, you hear me talk a lot about how, society, kind of trains us to do things, and the school system trains us to do things, and, advertising and, all this stuff, right? There's also the reality that, part of what I was, one of the things that I've come to realize in my own mindfulness journey, and one of the things I was thinking about as I was, kind of making notes about this course is that, if you go back, say, 50 years, right? Like when I was a kid, right? And this is not, this is like empirical data, right? There's this historical record, right? That we know that someone who had even whatever full-time job you had, right? If you had one full-time job, and only one parent in a family has a full-time job, then generally speaking, that family has enough money to afford a house, clothes, food, and a modest vacation every year, right? Like that's the 50s, 60s, and 70s, model of America, right? That's not true anymore. Okay, that is not true anymore. I mentioned to you in the last segment that 77% of American adults live from paycheck to paycheck. The same amount of people, the same percentage of the population who reportedly experiences chronic stress, which is an interesting correlation, and I think probably a causation. And so the idea here is that, the world is not what we've been led to believe it is, right? And there are forces at play here that are making things happen, especially in America, that are making things very, very difficult. And the stakes are higher, right? People are getting evicted from their homes. People are being foreclosed on their homes. And so when we turn on the news and we turn on social media and even some of the entertainment that we watch, we're seeing all this over and over and over, and we're seeing the violence in the world, and we're seeing it. But again, this is not a mistake that we're only seeing these aspects, right? This is engineered, right? They want us to be scared, because what do scared people do? They buy shit, right? And that's what they want. They want you to buy shit. because that's what matters in this world. And so we're going to take a look at that in this new course. And I'm going to give you now here's the thing. It's not about bypassing that. A lot of spiritual courses that you'll come across if you're looking will say things like, just get rid of negative energy, only experience positive emotions, let go of anger doesn't belong, and all this kind of stuff, right? And what that is, that's a bypass. That's an escape, right? And so you can't escape society, right? You can't escape the world, right? And so instead of escaping, what we're going to be doing in this 8-week course is we're going to be talking about coping, and we're going to be talking about understanding, and we're going to be talking about becoming really aware of what's going on, and specifically the sort of machinations behind the scenes that are at play that show that this stuff is not just accidental, right? It's not just a fluke that we're in this position. And so anyway, it's going to have some, current affairs kind of thing. It's going to involve a lot of critical thinking about current affairs and politics and stuff. It's going to, yes, include compassion and some forgiveness, but most of all, it's going to be awareness, non-judging awareness. And I've got some great practices, some great lectures, and I'm really, really excited about this course. So if you're interested, again, the early bird pricing is good for the next 2 days, okay? And on Monday, it's going to go up to the regular price. So if you're interested in saving $20 or $22, you can do that today and for the next couple of days. All right. I do have a like sort of a description page that I'm going to put out in today's email. So you'll see a link to that below. But yeah, let me know if you want to sign up because I'd love to have you in this course. Okay. So listen, I'm going to go now. We're at the end of our time. I'm really sorry about this second segment. It felt so clunky. My gosh, I haven't had one of those in a long time. But again, let's accept it. Let's laugh at it. And let's just know that it's not that serious and it's okay. All right, everybody. Have a great day. I wish you well. I'll be back in tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.